So I know this is like the umpteenth time we have made a specific video on this trade alone, but I really wanted to talk about the angle of this being a good thing for both sides. You know, we hadn't really explored the positives for Chicago as much as we have all the positives and all the good rainbows and sunshines that have presented themselves for the Montreal Canadiens. And of course, we are talking today about the Kirby Dach trade, wherein the Canadiens sent away Alexander Romanov for the 13th overall pick. They then sent that 13th overall pick over to Chicago in exchange for Kirby Dach. So, in a way, by proxy, the Canadiens got Dach for Romanov, but the Chicago Blackhawks traded away Dach for that 13th overall pick. There were some extra picks thrown in there just to make things a little bit more equal, but essentially the meat on the bone was that. Dach for 13th overall. And the reason we're making this video is because I saw a post made on the Chicago Blackhawks subreddit saying this: "Keep seeing these highlight clips of Dach. I miss him. I wonder if he would have developed here, or did he need a change of pace? I think he's got quite a bit of good hockey in front of him." This was published a few days ago by Amigo de Diabla. Interesting username, I like that a lot. But if you go over to Kirby Dach and you see what he has done this season for the Montreal Canadiens, the 22-year-old forward, big dude, right-handed guy who plays on the center and wing position, has 32 points in 50 games played, on pace for a total of 52 points, which would be a career high. Everybody's been talking about Dach and how he plays with Suzuki, he plays with Caulfield, he does this, he does that. It's amazing. It's a win for Montreal because they traded away defenseman Romanov for a guy like Dach who has been helping them out a lot. However, if you talk about this trade from the perspective of Chicago, I did want to go over some perspectives that indicate this as a potential win-win rather than just a straight-up Montreal triumph over Chicago. So, what I wanted to do was go over some of the comments on this subreddit post about Kirby Dach and just kind of go over what a lot of Blackhawks fans have to say, as well as interject with my own opinions about these pieces of analysis regarding Kirby Dach. Yankee Viking first comment says, "Sometimes a fresh start is all it takes. The Hawks put way too much pressure on Dach to succeed. Same thing happened to Matt Nieto in San Jose. He started using his big frame. He'll do well in Montreal." Dishonorable Prince says that Dach got exactly what he needed, a fresh start and a fire lit under him to really improve on a new team. I honestly think he probably would have continued to flounder on this team with where we're at this season. Cam Barker for Norris says, "I think he just needed a wake-up call. He had it easy on the Hawks and never had any threat of being sent to Rockford. I feel like he got used to the NHL life and kind of lost track of what to do in areas he needed to develop and kept playing the same game just to stay in the show. The trade lit a fire under him as an FU to the Hawks, and he might not have it as easy in Montreal, seeing guys like Caulfield being sent to Laval." Two sketchy replies saying agreed. He didn't really seem that motivated to improve. Initially, when he came back from that wrist injury, he seemed hungry. Then it fizzled. I think a healthy amount of conflict of threat thereof is when he needs to be successful. And this is sort of where I start to talk about the win-win aspect, or the win-win potential of this trade. Because Kirby Dach in Chicago was in a position where, sure, he was a young guy that was improving slowly, little by little, and it got to the point where it was so little by little that you could debate that he was sort of stagnant in a way. Now, even though Dach has been flourishing in Montreal, as we said, he's on pace for 50-something points on the year, there was a period of time, like last season, before the trade actually went down, when we were making videos about Kirby Dach and how he was sorta, in trade rumors. How the Blackhawks had him back from injury and he was really effective after coming back, but the seasons after, he sort of lost that edge. He wasn't at the same point production pace, and at the end of the day, a lot of success in the NHL is straight up just measured by points. So seeing a guy do well and then produce fewer later on, it's kind of alarming, isn't it? And so for Kirby Dach getting sent over to Montreal and having this new sort of, let's just say, energy in his game, it's been very nice seeing him play with Suzuki and Caulfield formerly, because, Caulfield's not there anymore, but just seeing him play the way he has, he's controlling the pace of play. It's almost like he wants to go out there and improve more so than he had before. And for Chicago, you're getting a guy in the 13th overall pick, Frank Nazar III, that realistically does have a shot of being a good top six forward. Now, I get you could say it's improper asset management to turn a 3rd overall pick into a 13th overall pick, but sometimes things happen, and unfortunately players don't develop at the pace that you want them to. Now, for Frank Nazar III, unfortunately, he has not played a game for Michigan yet. He is still injured, and that was kicked off back in October, I believe. It was already planned that he would miss the entire season of his freshman Michigan year, which is quite a shame since Michigan's doing pretty well with Adam Fantilli and Luke Hughes and everybody else that's over there. Just adding a guy like Nazar with the motor that he has, the offensive processing that he has, would have been very nice. And obviously, there's a different style of play that Nazar has comparative to a guy like Kirby Dach. So once Nazar eventually plays his few NCAA years, he finds his way over maybe in Rockford, and then works his way up to Chicago, or he goes to Chicago right away, you're going to notice a really big difference in the type of playing style that you have. Kirby Dach is a lot more of that playmaking, finesse type of center with a big frame. Nazar is just a bullet. He goes out there and he works and he works and he works even more, and then he goes out there and finds very nice offensive opportunities. He played really well with guys like Logan Cooley and all the other NTDP phenoms that were on that team the prior few years. So Nazar has a chance of being a legit top 6 forward, maybe like 60-65 point potential with some good leadership qualities and probably an ability to play on the penalty kill too. Not to mention the fact that his play style is something that a lot of teammates are going to rally behind. Teammates and fans are going to watch Nazar play and be like, yeah, no, that's a rock star right there. That's our guy. And unfortunately with Kirby Dach, there just wasn't that same level of attribution given towards him from the way that he would play in Chicago. There might have been in the time when he came back from wrist surgery, but not towards the end. It was very difficult to see Kirby Dach become the player that he had become, and I feel like a lot of these Blackhawks fans illuminating that sentiment that, yeah, even though it's easy to miss him because he's playing well in Montreal, there definitely wasn't the guarantee that he'd be as good here in Chicago than he is in Montreal right now had he stuck around. And getting that younger 13th overall pick and Frank Nazar also getting the lowered position in the standings helps out a ton because you get Connor Bedard easier if you don't have a guy like Kirby Dach on your team. So in a way, I mean, a few years down the line, you look at the context, you say, okay, maybe Nazar is a really good player, he's actually a contributing forward, and the Blackhawks end up getting a guy like Connor Bedard, or maybe even Fantilli in the draft because they lost out on Dach and they got significantly worse. Lost out on Dach, lost out on DeBrincat, lost out on Kubalik, Strome, etc. Maybe this is a win-win. But for now, of course, it's easy to say that Montreal came out on top because in the short term, Kirby Dach is doing things at the NHL level right now. Chicago fans are just more focused on the long term, which is why they're not going out there and losing sleep over this trade, it appears to me. So, Todd, with the console, your thoughts. What do you think about this trade being a win-win? Do you think Chicago has a chance of actually getting significant value out of it? Because that's definitely how I feel up to this point, especially seeing what Blackhawks fans are considering valuable from this sort of trade. If you're a Chicago fan, is there anything that I'm missing from this angle? Do you think there's a little bit more aspects that I hadn't covered? And if so, what are they? If you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, what are your thoughts on losing out on everything and gaining Kirby Dach in return? I know it's pretty much a win for everybody involved in Montreal because getting rid of Romanov and getting Dach in return by proxy is a pretty good move on paper. But thoughts in the comment section, either way, all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9. And bye.